very much important part. So like these are physical measures, whereas when we look at these psychological components like personality, attitude, or any other behavioral aspects, so the assessment of those aspects and abilities comes with a little bit more about in terms of the rigorousness. It's not like you observe and do some assessment. So there is a measurement theory that is behind, which is which has a particular systematic stepwise approach. So today in this class session, especially the block 4, if you look at the syllabus content, so it talks about testing and measurement concepts. This is very much important. As a psychologist, which you are pursuing as a part of your career. So when you select a tool from a market, okay, I want to measure strength of a particular of an individual. So there is a new tool on which measures gratitude of a person. So let me use. You will ready to pay some money, but whether the money that you are going to pay is really worth or not is actually depends on how you understand the psychometric properties of the tool. So when we say psychometric properties, so that includes particular norms, that includes reliability component, that includes validity component, that includes the how you administer the test, scoring, interpretation. So all these components comes as a very important, which gives the actual weightage of a psychometric test. In US, the second most profit-making industry after the automobile is it's the psychological assessment and testing. So today in this today our class we'll be looking at this important concept. What we look at, what we say, the psychological testing and assessment. So one way or the other in your day-to-day life or applications, you have been asked to be part of psychological tests, right? So you have been asked to measure a certain component, right? So let's try to understand. So what is different types of test and what are the concepts that is involved in testing and measurement. Okay. So we will look at from the point of origin of psychological testing, that includes the personality, because the testing industry and assessment all the way you can trace back from 18th century. Early end of the 18th century, people were trying to look at scholastic as the industrial revolution is pushing on one side. So people were keen to understand what is that the intelligence which drives the humanity. So the Darwin's theory of intelligence, which is very famous one, the survival of the fittest. So some ways like a kind of the contribution and his brother who led to the development of a series of intelligent tests, right? So let's try to understand what is the basic component of test. Right.
Ma'am, would you be sharing
Yeah, I
any?
am sharing. I am sharing. Yes, one second. Is it visible?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
So when we say, so what is a psychological test, which is a personality assessment, is a very important part. So what a tool, any tool which measures the aspect of personality or intelligence or an aptitude or an ability. So it includes basically an objective standardized measure of a sample behavior. So when we say personality assessment, so it has an objective way of measuring the group of people, which we refer as sample behavior. Second, these observations are made, right? It's like it's not on a small, but a carefully chosen in a particular sampling method on a sampling behavior you choose, and then you try to predict the value of a psychological test. So for example, Minnesota Multiphasic Personality Inventory (MMPI) is a clinical scale which tried to predict the personality disorder, which as per the DSM categorization. But so tool is used as a diagnostic personality assessment, a personality assessment tool that is used for screening, a personality assessment that's used for selection. So it depends on the degree how much you relatively predict a particular component of a behavior on a given test. So commonly it is a temporal estimate. So what is a assessment? Assessment is a temporal assessment. How far predominantly of this particular individual is an extrovert? How far predominantly of this particular individual is an introvert? So these are the kind of, you might have seen. So on the one of the classes, I think I have shown you the series of tests, right? So honesty, integrity test, MBTI, Meyer-Briggs type indicator test. These are the different personality tests. So these personality tests are developed through objective and standardized measure. So what is that testing and assessment includes? So which includes a kind of an how do I say, a kind of rigorous measurement, as well as the once a standardized measurement will help you to predict, forecast. Okay, if the individual XYZ subject score is likely that, so that the likely interpretation is going to be this. So based on the present test performance, you are going to make certain interpretations and forecast the future. So, what are the features? What involves a particular personality assessment, right? A personality assessment include this is like behavioral sample, right? So then you have a standardization. It means uniformity of procedure in administrating. One second, I am sorry. I am the person who's making the trouble. Yeah. So standardization basically, so that when I compare a score between a group of people, that should be it should not have an very much too much of extremes, right? So standardization sample includes a kind of an saying that this is what the average score, so this is what the low score, this is what the high score. So how you come up with this? So through the technique of test standardization with a series of based on measurement theory. So let me put it in simple way. So based on the measurement theory, so we standardize the whatever the scores that we have obtained. Usually, the standardization of test sample will include more or less 1,000 participants to 2,000, 5,000, 6,000, depending upon the power of the test and number of items used in the assessment. So that's how and the kind of item difficulty. So how much is it from the simple item to higher item difficulty? If it is an intelligent test, if it's a performance-based test, so that is also comes in a kind of different aspect. Then comes the reliability. So what is it? This is very important part. So it's like when we say a reliability test. So how whatever the scores that we obtain. So today I'll give you MBTI. So you'll get a particular combination of personality type. And after 6 months, 7 months, I will measure you. So whether the predominantly the personality type it should not vary. This is like if you have 4 combination, at least out of 4, 2 should be the remain same, because MBTI comes with 4 into 4 the combination of permutation combination of different personality types. So if it is the personality type is varying, so means either the subject might have not understood the statement very clearly, nor the administration might not be the proper, or the scoring would be a issue. So I'm just giving a kind of given so assessment itself. So in your practical classes, so that's why how to administer a tool, how do you interpret a score obtained from the tool administration, how do you write a discussion, what is, so when I say a score, a person who is having a burnout level of high burnout score, right? So what do you mean by that, what it indicates? So all this, so it is very important as a professional assessment part is an important part, especially in personality assessment. A lot of the first paper pencil test was developed by Woodsworth. so which is known as personality screening inventory, something. So in order to during World War II, so they wanted to screen the soldiers to match their personality profile with the job roles. So Woodsworth developed the personality inventory for the selection purpose. Okay, so now reliability, how good is the test and does it really work? So that is very important. And consistency, the consistency when I give the test or a period of time, so the result has to be similar, right? So that is reliability. And coming to the validity, so the degree in which the test actually measures and what is supposed to measure. So the items which are supposed to measure, introvert should not measure the extroversion. So that is validity, right? So now let's look at so how well the test fulfill its function. Then coming to the other components of this test, this is all about the features which comes under when you buy a tool from a market. So you should be very much clear of these five major components. How the test was standardized on what sample of German population, or it could be a Netherlands population, or it could be a Japan-based population. There is one tool which talks about the ethical behavior. So I will, if I take the tool, ethical behavior developed and standardized in a Japan university college student and administered here in Indian college students, obviously there will be a lot of validity, reliability related issues because how the ethical behavior is perceived, the items that and the examples that is pointed towards the cultural factors has to be mapped, right? So as to usually most of the PhD students, research scholars are very much thrilled, will be on to the toe to use that tool and administer here and say, hey, we have found this, and run a structural equation model and say the observed beta value is this much and this is the predict value and write a journal. So I mean, a lot of paper got published like that, but how far the credibility of those results? So it's like I am putting the elephant, fish and tortoise and rabbit and asking them to climb in a tree. So that's how it unfortunately the recruitment industry, if they don't give the contextual factor, don't account to the contextual factor, misinterpretation and reliability issues comes in a kind of an in a big way. Okay, coming back. Then the most important part, because personality assessment includes two components. One is projective tests, another is objective test. Projective test, what are the projective tests? The projective techniques where you give a stimuli, an ambiguous stimuli, right? So I will show you a picture. For example, Rorschach ink block text. So Rorschach ink block test or a thematic apperception test, TAT. So you might be having a practical session test on that also. So if you have not done till now, probably next semester will come. If you have, great, fine, well enough. So these are these are not paper pencil tests, right? So these tests, so what will happen, projective, so you give one stimulus and ask them to respond based on the stimulus. So here the picture will become a stimulus. So I will present a story and I'll ask the subject, who is the hero in the story, what is happening in the future, what has happened in back. So thereby the individual rely in his internal projection, the underlying personality component to come out. So that is more qualitative information rather than on a 5-point rating scale administering part. So the selection of the test so includes a lot of things. A qualified examiner should know how to do the interpretation, all those aspects. The role of test user should be qualified. Anyone can't just say that I can come and do administrative test. So that's a very lot of legal kind of a component. And sharing the personal data is also is a concern. Okay, so if you go back all the way when this kind of testing and selection and has been started, can it can actually date back from at least 2020 BC. Chinese emperor in his dynasty, Han dynasty, he had very rudimentary testing practices for those who failed examination, for the ministerial candidate, for the public administrative purpose. So they had a kind of practices of doing this. not only from China, even from India. If you look at the Chanakya Arthashastra, so Kautilya clearly specifies the testing and selection procedures for what we call it as a chaplain, departmental heads, business trade heads for different forestry, agriculture. So for them, they used to do upada. So it's like a, which means testing. So based on Purushartha, so the four testings have been done, like Dharmopada, which is how far you are righteous on a given situation. Then Kamopada, whether you get attracted to particular situation, it's like through spies, you are giving some kind of corruption, you just tell about that person, or so Kamopada, that kind of testing. Then fear of life. So we'll give you put a kind of a bravery kind of situation. You should sacrifice your life. So what we call it as one who is able to bhayotpada, so like fear, so encountering fear. So those who pass the test, so he will become a military professional. One who becomes who passed the Dharmopada test, he will become the lawmaker, or he'll become the chief village head, something like that. So the one who passed Kamopada, he will be a guard of the queen, or taking care of the women, and elderly people. So all those kind of things, Dharmopada, Kamopada. So it's like, and you have Arthopada, especially. So one who is not getting influenced by bribe. So the ministers at that point of time, departmental heads, they used to give some on a real bound situations. These kind of simulation used to happen. So used to happen. So I'm just giving the testing from the that age to here. It has been there and different wise. So another part of his psychological testing is physiognomy, where based on the appearance. So this also has been quoted in Kautilya Arthashastra. So it's like how a minister, a Raja, in terms of the physical abilities, what is the character, right? So it also, these are the kind of early part of representation of psychological testing. Later, then phrenology came into picture in the early 17th century. Then they try to understand what is there inside the mind, how the mind functions. So structuralism, functionalism, you might have read about these components. And physiognomy remained popular for centuries based on the physical appearance and traits. Then they try to look at the based on the head bumps. So how bulky the head. So Franz Joseph Gall, so he tried to popularize phrenology for the psychological testing. Then few brass instrument era came in picture. So try to understand those structural part of the mind. And let me jump a little bit. Then Francis Galton, so who can be considered as a modern who gave revolutionized the psychological testing field, because after his invention of a lot of he's a great statistician, as well as and he founded a lot of differential aptitude tests, right? So to identify the individual differences in a classroom. So he covered a lot of laboratory studies, what sensory discrimination, motor skills, and reaction time. He's a founder of the field called what is today is referred as differential psychology. So great, lot of objective tests came into picture. Then Raymond Cattell studied a lot of experimental psychology. He invented the term mental test. So then came in the early 19th century, Alfred Binet, he used the intelligence test. So a lot of rating scales came into picture. The first person to divide rating scales was Christian Thomasius. Then in the second century, rating scale, even Greco-Roman physician, in order to rate your pain, or so even rating scales were used at that point of time. So early conception, even the mental retardation. So I'm just jump through so that I don't want to. So timeline, if you look at, so one's from 18th century. So the first printed examination, so like how kind of what we call it as today's scholastic aptitude test, all the way you can date back to 18th century. And George Fisher and other people developed series of scales for sample question to select the best students out of the common group. And Francis Galton also tried to identify the gifted children. So they developed a series of tests. So then followed by Emilian Catlin. So what we use the word association technique. So this was used to study schizophrenia people, and Francis Galton opens anthropometric laboratory. So then followed by J.M. Cattle, he opens testing laboratory at Pennsylvania, sensory motor test, and spelling abilities among school children. So all this. Then coming to the lot of intelligent tests came into picture for the World War One and World War Two. So that was influenced by and especially the testing of giftedness. Hollingworth is one person, woman who have she has tremendously given a lot of contribution in the field of IQ testing. So today, gifted children is become one of the hot research area. All the intelligence tests came in picture. The early, so there are group test and World War Army recruits. So what we call it as Army Alpha and Army Beta. So that gave rise to the series of batteries of intelligent tests. So Army Alpha is considered like 8 verbally loaded tests. So Army Beta, which is non-verbal group, because few people were illiterate also. So how you, the language was one of the huge constraint and barrier. So to classify men according to based on their mental ability. So that was one of the earlier aspects that was used. Then followed by educational testing came in picture. So machine scoring was introduced in the early 1930s. Thanks to IBM. So development of aptitude test and multiple aptitude test batteries. So Charles Spearman is one person. So I'm just giving a kind of a brief part, and this is where the Woodsworth, who is the person who, after intelligent test, brass era, then coming to the educational testing. So the personality and vocational test. So Woodsworth is the first kind of a personality as per the recorded literature. So in addition, he introduced the Minnesota multiphasic personality inventory, which determined fake, bad. So he used a few test items and methods like fake, bad, fake, good. So usually we, when you give a statement and on a 5-point rating scale, you tend to fake it in a good way or tend to fake it in a bad way, or random response, you don't participate at all. So those components also he brought into those aspects. Then coming to the origin of projective testing. So that includes Rorschach-in-block methods, which I have spoken recently, and the development of interest inventories, especially for the career counseling and guidance. So the emergence of structured personality test was evident in the early 1940s. So personality test began to flourish as a useful tool, as a clinical evaluation, diagnostic and screening, because after post World War and World War II, so most of the thing is like you need people to screen who is normal, who is not normal. So that was the market demand, so you can understand. So for example, the pandemic itself, the 6 months of pandemic or the 2 lockdown, lot of testing and assessment have taken place. People have literally the awareness on mental health literacy. One of the the survey studies shows that the adults and adolescents, at least one person know one disorder. That is the common one, which is depression. So a lot of people were searching, the search data analytics were more in towards depression, the general anxiety disorder. So people have spoken about that. So it's like, yes, so that's how the flourish after a kind of post-traumatic syndrome. People seek for solitude and expansion. So emergence of structured personality test and evidence-based practices came into picture. So coming to last 100 years, what it is in terms of major. So Thorndike developed the mental and social instrument. A lot of intelligence scales came into picture, and objective tests for abilities-based test. So then comes, I just run through, first group of intelligence test was developed in 1914, then followed by Stanford Binet, Army Alpha and Beta, so that is done. Scholastic aptitude test, which is today is the most one of the important criteria for TOEFL, GRE, for you to go abroad. So that's kind of to screen applicants for the college. Then the first edition of vocational interest test So individuals. So that's all those revision of. Then Henry Murray publishes Exploration of Personality. That's the first mental measurement. Then coming to the Westler intelligence scale, Bradford intelligence scale, increase of use of computer design after 1970s. A lot of recruitment and selection purpose, computerization came into theory. Then came 1980s to 2002, development of item response theory, IRT, which is also referred as measurement theory. So which you will be studying also if you are interested in psychometry. Then followed by standard education psychological testing. What are the different standard ethical aspects? So these are the most commonly used tests. Set toward 2013, American Psychological Association gives a clear ethical principles, a psychological code of conduct, how to use the tool, and what are the ethical concerns. So that is also. Then you have computer assisted testing, gamification. Now today's digitization, a lot of online development experimentation are happening. So that is one part. So to come with different types of test, I hope everyone are with me. Any doubt? Shall I go ahead?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you. So I'll be running like a train. So if I'm very fast, just pause me, or you can note the point and ask me the question at the end.
Ma'am, like previous some slides actually they were too quick. I mean, we couldn't note down all. I mean,
Okay. Which part, ma'am?
ma'am, because 18th and 19th centuries, what you have shown, the history.
History wise, I just ran because that's not there in the syllabus. So
Okay,
don't
okay,
worry.
okay,
Yes,
fine.
madam. It is not there in the syllabus.
Share
Just
the
to
file,
set the
the
context.
slide.
So this is very important. This is in the part of your syllabus.
Yeah.
But
Sure.
18th and 19th century is more towards trying to understand the external structure of the brain.
Okay.
Right. Then the 19th century, they want to measure the abilities in terms of the intelligence, personality came into picture, interest, then differential aptitudes. So that's how it is. So basically, we to summarize what we looked at from the last presentation, a psychological test or an assessment includes, first one is a standardized sample, second scoring, interpretation, right? Then there is a procedure or way to administer the test, and you should have a thorough background of how to do the interpretation of those scores. So this is very important. So when we talk about a test assessment, so these are the five key: objectivity of the test, standardization of the test, reliability and validity of the test are the important aspects. Okay, now let's. This is very important. So the block 4 talks about the testing and measurement concepts, standardization, norms, reliability, and validity. Right. So so that is very important. So what are the kinds of norms? So what are the other functions? So we'll be looking into that. As I told, yeah, so that is part high. Standardized procedure includes, for example, when I administering a test, that has to be uniform. So either the one examiner or other examiner is administered. So whatever the direction, the procedure, so it has to be uniform. So standardization procedure is that. So to keep, for example, if I put a digit span test, which is used for neurological, neuropsychological batteries of test, right? So I will give you numbers and ask you to recall, right? So that to present number at so how I present number 4, 5, 6. Then I'll to another subject if I say 4, 5, 6. No, that has to be in a constant rate to keep the neutral facial expression when the examiner records subject answer is also important. So when the subject is trying to recall the number, so you should not be distractive. So the administrator should know how to react to the unexpected responses as well as. So now you know what are those micromanagement and non-verbal aspects of communication comes in very important handy here. It's not only the scoring, how you administer and record the responses is all comes under the standardized procedure. So behavioral sample, I have spoken about it. Scoring the categories. So when you're scoring the categories, for example, all the people are, for example, in personality test, we assume that have a particular personality trait or a characteristics that is being measured. Yes, somebody having a doubt? Okay, so I'll continue. So, what when we score certain different characteristics on different aspects, so first impression that is like there is given situation, whatever it is, there is some measurement error will come. So any given response that is a desired response, which is the X, which is equal to the test item, which comes with a kind of an error, right? So this scoring categories has accounts for measurement error, and the test result do not represent a thing with physical reality. To give an example, assume that I make a measurement on self-esteem, right? So individual scores 1 1 1 1 1, so like probably he doesn't feel or whatever, or so when I say he falls under the below average category. So does it mean that individual doesn't have self-esteem? Anybody in the class?
Can you repeat the question, ma'am?
Okay. So
No, ma'am. No, ma'am. No one can have zero self-esteem.
correct. Thank you. Hava. So assume that I do an assessment of Lakshmi Kamala. Her self-esteem score is less below average, and I say there is no self-esteem at all. So that is not true, because the on a measurement scale. So we have four types of measurement that you will be studying in future also. So one is the nominal measurement, ordinal measurement, so ratio, scale. So like that so nominal measurement is like it's dichotomous in nature, either present, not present. So ordinal is like on a given set of unit of series in a universal or in subset series. So you are going to rate them or put them in an order or based on a ranking order. So it has an ordinal principle. So each one, the value in which how you assign a rating scale is an ordinal. It's an ordinal scale. So, but when I rate, I don't give 5 out of 5 for everything, but I give 1 or 0. If it is but 0 doesn't mean that that particular behavior trait or that particular behavioral component is not present. So that as a psychologist, we should be able to, even when you administer intelligent tests. So I see, unfortunately, most of the parents taking it very wrongly, especially the intelligent tests and creativity test. So for special education, I worked as a special education teacher in one of the Bangalore premier institutes. So when we administer and when we say the score is low, they think that the child doesn't have intelligence at all. When we administer creativity test, so that's where the as a child psychologist or interpreting or any psychologist in practice use of tools and assessment, when we say so this is low, or when we say below average, above average, or high. So while interpretation of the score, the low doesn't mean it doesn't mean it is absent. So that has to be very carefully be discussed. Okay. Yeah. Now coming to the next part, norms and standards. Every tool. So the examinee and they have a score, raw score, and you compare with the norms, the scores obtained by the others on the same test. That information is available only in norms. So there are different types of norms. One is age norms. For example, I have my subject belongs to adolescent age. I have I have administered a test for college going student. So I want to look at her score and say whether it is high or low. So before telling high or low, I should look at her age group. So based on the age group in which that particular tool has been developed, so I will compare the score with that particular age group. If I compare the score, an adolescent score, with a late adulthood age group, so obviously you are comparing again with fish and the elephant. So that's the thing. Okay, so for this same purpose, the test developers typically provide a norms, right? Age norms they give. So gender-based norms also now it is there. Then you have the norms based on occupation. If you're skilling set, I don't know, occupation-based norms also have come. So representative group of subjects on a large, so based on how they perform, so the norms have been developed. Okay, so what we call it as criterion referenced test based on exception. Sometimes there are certain case which has to be you have to give an exception. So a few will not be uh, in the norms might be scoring above or very less. So for those exceptional cases, you have to give a criterion reference test. So that is in depth. You can don't need to worry about that. So it's like once you take up psychometry paper, you'll be able to understand in depth. Then prediction of non-test behavior. So any purpose of personality assessment is to predict the additional behavior other than directly sampled by the test. So how it is? So the ability of the test, no test behavior is determined by extensive body of validational research. So most of it's like when I say this score. So based on the score, I should be able to predict what it will be the future. The test is released, right? So for that, further we have norm referenced test, criterion reference test. So based on certain criteria, so it's like criterion where I'll put certain those who are scoring 50 and above, those who are scoring 75 and above. So I'll put where the individual stands. Then I will define what are their aspects, like that. So in educational, most of the educational and summative tests, they follow criterion referenced approach. Psychological tests follow norm referenced based approach. Okay. Now let's focus on type of tests. So intelligent aptitude I have given already, achievement, creativity, personality test, interest inventory, behavioral procedures, neuropsychological test. So I'll just directly get into in personality test, measures that qualities and behavior, checklist inventories, sentence ink block tests. So and in that test, so what is very important? So if I go in depth, so I will. So any test, personality test should be used one for classification or screening component, diagnosis as a clinical analysis, and to be aware of oneself, or you give an intervention or you given one particular learning and development program. So whether that particular component has an effective one or not. So you do a program evaluation for the research purpose, for the education purpose. So tests are used on general. So there are kind of classification, assigning a person to one category to another. So test and or the placement or screening certification. The tests, as most of the personality tests, are classified in that way. And certain personality tests are used for diagnostics to classify the personality abnormal behavior and behavioral pattern. So all those is aspect. I will psychological test can also become a potential source of self knowledge. For example, if I know what is my career path, how to plan, so that the identifying one's strength. So if you go to Gallup today, it's like there is one very beautiful tool which is developed, Gallup Strength Finder. So after the class, you can actually explore yourself. It is based on the approach of positive psychology. So looking at the strength, not at the weakness part. So the whole view of psychology, it's not about more towards diagnostic. I don't want to look at the behavior or the limitations of a personality, but rather I would like to look at the strength which is available in your personality, so that we can match your strength and build more perspectives and growth towards strength. So Gallup is one assessment. It's like a consultation, a global platform. So most of the people, companies, they take the Gallup surveys to identify. They have come up with 36 classification of strength. So that is based on the contribution of Clifton Strength theory. So, it's a strength-based approach. Okay. So then coming to the overall program evaluation. So you conduct some educational program, right? Social program evaluation. So how was the effectiveness of that particular program? Then collecting the data from psychological research I have done. I think this part is done. Now let us focus on reliability. So I am switching over to reliability. Okay. So what is reliability in a test? So how we measure reliability in a test? So we know reliability is nothing but technically it measures the average correlation among the items within a test. For example, in a personality test, I am measuring. Let us take the Triguna concept of personality is one of the most of the organization positive psychology are trying to measure the personality, like how the individual sattva guna, raja guna, and tamo guna, which one is predominant, right? So for sattva guna, I have 10 items, tamo guna, I have 10 items, and raja guna, I have 10 items. So the 10 items what was the average correlation of those 10 items within the test is the estimate of reliability. Right? If the item correlation are high, means that is measuring that particular construct. If the item correlation are less, means it is not measuring that particular construct. There you need to revisit the items and rework. So that is the part. So reliability refers to the consistency of the score obtained by same person on different sets. The concept of reliability is used to cover several aspects of score consistency. So most of the reliability tests are used on different occasions. For example, if you are how the test is operating on different occasion on the same person. So you will do a test-retest method, or you want to look at how the test is operating on different person on an equivalent items. So you will be using parallel forms. So end of the day, the focus is on how much the internal consistency is the test is. So it can be used in different research methods. So now again, so types of reliability. So you have two types: internal reliability and external reliability. So internal reliability is the internal consistency of the test within self. So that is used by that test is internal reliability. The test is established through a statistical method, which is referred as split-off method. So it is there in the SPSS. So actually, what it does, so assume that the Triguna personality test, I have 30 items, right? So the split-off method equally splits half 15 and 15 items randomly and measures the inter-item correlation of those. So that's how the split half method. Then coming to the external method. So external method is test retest. So it's like I will probably I might administer the test on same subject on 2 different periods of time. Then I will measure the correlation. Then same inter-rater reliability testing method. So that is the degree to which the different raters. So probably I will ask 5 subject experts to give the rating on these 30 items of Triguna personality, whether this particular item, how far it is consistent on measuring that of that same behavior. So then I will compare the consistency of the estimates given from the different raters. So that is inter-rater ability. So what is the key bullet point? Okay, if I do this internal and external types of reliability. So a good reliable test, right? And validity test. A good reliable test, if you focus only on reliability of the test, but it is measuring something else, what will happen? So this is the first quadrant which you are seeing on your RHS right hand side. So it's like where it is all the items are measuring, but it is not measuring supposed to measure. So if I something like it is measuring only the tamoguna, so it will be like all the items only the tamoguna, like I mean the tamasic part of personality, or items measuring only the extroversion, social behavior. but not introversion or agreeableness. The big five personality traits dimension will not be there. If the items are both reliable and valid. So this is how the items correlation will be like precise. If the item is valid but not reliable, like MBTI, most of the issue with MBTI, one of the limitation of the MBTI personality type, because the item is not reliable, because the test retest reliability of those items, sometimes it varies, but valid. But what happens, both item unreliable and invalidity. So this is where you will not be able to use the tool at all. So now you know the importance of reliability and validity of the test. Yes?
Ma'am,
Yes.
any examples for unreliable and invalid?
Yeah. So any exercise that you okay, you use a survey tool to measure something on for example, during pandemic time, we only might have asked a lot of questions among with our colleagues, or we might have done our own developed certain few items, right? So items which we develop, and you get, you know the scores, but you are not able to interpret whether it is high or wrong, high or low. All we know, all we can do is how many people on a percentage, 100%, 60%, 70%, how many people are saying yes, how many people are saying no. So again, that is invalid. So when you put in a percentage, it's like when I say difficulty in doing online teaching classes, everyone are having backache, everyone having concentration issues. So everyone said 70% of them, school teachers have said issues with the learning and teaching process is not good. Fine, it is not good, but what is not good? So there is, that precision is lost. So that's where the tool, when you are developing, it has to be both valid and unreliable. So hope I'm able to answer it.
Ma'am, in history, we have seen like a whole set of tools,
Yes.
and in the recent history as well. So amongst them, has anything been declared as unreliable and invalid?
See, again, it depends upon the subject and the topic and of the which you take. So we will take the post-pandemic part only. So I have the example which I told. A teacher, school teachers have told 70%. But what this 70% people are indicating, so again, I have to use a kind of a criterion reference method to understand what aspects they are saying they are having a difficulty in delivering virtual classes, or where is the capacity building is required. So why they are not able to transform from physical class to where are the roadblocks. See, use of both qualitative as well as quantitative methods helps us to build a good context. Any item which is built without the context will be unreliable.
Ma'am, a relevant example, with personality test, ma'am. Any example?
Yeah, that's what I meant, ma'am.
Okay, personality test.
Yes,
So,
yes.
Because you said
Relevant
MBTI
to
for
personality.
unreliable but valid.
Yeah.
Similarly,
yeah, MBT,
any
yeah,
other.
like unreliable and unvalid will not be in the market at all, ma'am.
I
Nobody would
know,
dare
but
to take it.
is there anything that
Lot
was
of PhD
dismissed?
thesis which is there in Swayam. If you go to the Shodhana Ganga, almost any thesis which have done on tool development but not reached the psychometric market,
Market.
unreliable and unvalid. So in that
Okay.
context, if you ask, yeah, so many. Even me myself, I have developed one tool to measure team performance for airport rescue firefighters and emergency medical fighters.
Okay.
I'm not able to standardize because the people who are working in that group, it itself is less. Airport rescue
Yeah.
firefighters, we have only 10 international airports in throughout India. And if you, I mean, the availability of the sample is maximum 5,000 to 10,000 airport rescue firefighter, because that's a specialized group. So now I want to standardize the tool. And there comes a challenge. That's
Yeah.
the thing. So that's unreliable, unvalid. So based on the availability of the data, the contextual factors, the environmental factors, yes, it is unreliable and unvalid, but it doesn't mean it's a waste. So any research, again, coming back to the measurement component, when we say
Gopi, please
zero means
mute.
doesn't mean zero. It is useful. Again, it's the researcher art. So now what I'm speaking is the science. So it's the art of telling the story. So that we have a good data analytic team who can use non-parametric and do the bootstrapping method. And even if the data is not normal, so they try to understand what is the pattern which is there. Earlier, we used to remove the extreme end tail and then do the regression and predict the model. Now people are focused more on the critical regions of the normal probability curve. So what is happening on this? So that's why we have a lot of online courses on PLS method, partial least square method. So let us focus on what is happening on the data which is not normal. Now that has become a major trend.
Ma'am, can you give an
Reliable
example
and
for
unvalid. Yes, sir.
can you give an example for unreliable and but valid?
I just gave an example, sir.
So, ma'am, what are the tests now? And we can say they are reliable and valid too.
Yeah. Well, that's a good question. So now we are into that. So the type of reliability, test and retest, the measure of stability. So administer the same test measure on two different times to the same group of participants. So what reliability looks like, test one and test two. So then you have parallel form method. So it's like the measure of equivalence. So it's like you administer two different forms. So it's like, for example, personality 16 PF, personality 16 PF developed by Raymond B. Gattel. So it has two forms. So you have 4-5 forms, but same items, but measuring same dimension, but in different items. So you have you administered forms and on same group of participants, and establish the correlation strength between the form 1 and form 2, right? So then you have the inter-rater type of reliability test, a measurement of agreement, right? How two raters rate behaviors or the personality dimensions that you have measured, and determine the amount of agreement between them. So here the percentage of agreement comes into the picture. Then you have the internal consistency, is nothing but Cronbach alpha, so which measures the internal correlation of the item. So how far those items measure the underlying construct which is being measured. So overall correlation performance.
Ma'am, could you please explain Cronbach alpha a little more, ma'am? I mean, little
Sure.
simplify. I mean,
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. So Cooder-Richardson is one method, statistical method. Cronbach alpha is another statistical method. So it is the measure of inter-item correlation. So nothing but internal consistency of the method. So when we say internal consistency, we're getting inside. So the test is done in different situations, right? So usually when you are comparing the individual questions and consistent results, is like what we do is average inter-item correlation. How you do it is a comparison of correlation between all pairs of question in the same construct, and you try to determine what is the overall mean obtained for the paired correlation. The average item total correlation, where is like you calculate the total score for each item and then determine each item total score, and average item score is determined for each item. So then you do the correlation, average inter-item correlation. Then you have split half correlation. The split of correlation, these scores are obtained by same person on two equal halves. So all these methods, on a click of a button, it is available in SPSS, right? So then coming to the next part, Cronbach alpha. So Cronbach alpha, it calculates an equivalent of an average of all possible split half correlation. So how it has been? So the formula, it's like that, alpha is equal to number of items and divided by 1 plus n minus 1 of that particular, how the ratio of those. So n represents the number of components, and r bar represents the average of all correlation coefficients. Okay, so that's how the Cronbach alpha is computed. So SPSS does that for you when you have the item correlation aspects as well. inter-item correlation. When you drop one item, the Cronbach alpha level increases. So what is the range? So usually a Cronbach alpha having 0.4 to 0.6 is an acceptable score. 0.6 to 0.7 is a good average item which has average internal consistency. Anything above 0.7 and 8, it's considered as good internal consistency. So that's the interpretation. The split-off method assesses the internal consistency of a test. Psychometric. So we have other three statistical methods: Spearman and Brown formula, right? So that includes other applications. So there are two methods to measure internal consistency that have been majorly used. One is the commonly used is Cronbach alpha or coefficient alpha. So these methods are best used when you have dichotomous items. Again, if you have a paired, if you have developed the items true, false, or on a same scale. So that is being measured. Then you have test, retest. So most of the personality test, assessment, and standardization, right? One second. So most of the tests, the standardization that has been done is based on the test and retest. So if you look at the personality, Big 5 personality test, so that is the revisions you might have seen. So every test revision happens, so new dimensions will be added. Adding to that, for example, trait emotional intelligence is one good classical example. It is available on the market, which has a good psychometric property. Which they clearly talk about the test and retest conditions, and how far with other personality tests, how is the construct validity, is the strength of the construct validity has been explained in detail, right? So overall, this is like someone was asking about the Cronbach or coefficient alpha, right? So a high value on the alpha, so it's like when the obtained alpha value, if it is high, means that you have the all the items are measuring that particular dimension. If you have low, means it is not measuring aspect, but it is different, right? So again, you have to work it out. So how far, I have to give some example since the limitation of the time, so I had to wind up. Okay. So application of the test and retest reliability, again, a personality test, which I have told three aspects. So one is you are establishing the construct, right? Construct validity more balanced in comparison with others constructs of tools that have been developed. In an example, if the individual's reading ability becomes more stable over a period of time than the individual than that of the individual anxiety level. So I administer first, when I ask you to do some performance test, your scores value will be little bit it will be new. So administration of that, and if it is a power test, so we have two types of tests: power test and speed test. So power test, it doesn't have a time limitation. Speed test has a time limitation. So if it is time bound, you tend to make a lot of errors. If it is a power test, a lot of difficulty will be there. Fatigue and exhaustion comes in picture. So, but all this is like how the individual's ability becomes stable over a repetition of tests. So that is a part of test, retest reliability. Most of the assessment standardization comes in these aspects. For constructs that are likely to change over a time, which is acceptable, for example, which is cultural sensitivity test, like openness to the construct neuroticism, right? It has a lot of clinical component in it. So now the Big 5, the latest construct they talk about honest, because that is more rather than me measuring neuroticism, I want to measure the honesty level of the employees in the organization. So these constructs are likely to change over a time, what we developed. So based on the test retest reliability coefficient, so the developers and authors, if you work in a kind of psychometry industry, So that's which is a very big industry to get into. So, like for example, Deloitte, McKinsey. So these people are a series of consultants for these psychometric assessment and tool development. So the test retest method is majorly used to determine how the instrument is working. It's like upgrading your software. So that's it. So repeated administration, you identify the item which are not relevant and items which are, so they have their, what we call it as global indexes. So the trait index, for example, for gratitude, measurement of gratitude, so they have a global index that gives a global rating scale where you can, based on your score, you can compare where you stand globally. So whether it's high score or low score, something like that. So a few other aspects, the inter-rated reliability, the same test done among different people, so that is done. So application of inter-rated reliability. So someone was asking about please give us an example. In the field of psychometric, the measurement of knowledge, abilities, attitude, personality traits has been widespread use of inter-rated reliability, but especially in the Meyer-Briggs type indicator, right? So issues is there. So what happens when you're categorizing a sample on a particular condition or a particular situation? So what happens? How do you establish the same set of object to repeat? So that's the issue with, so patient care, for example, neonatal intensive care. This is a high sensitive area where you can't establish the inter-rater reliability. So on the ethical grounds also, that is very important aspect that need to be fulfilled. Okay, parallel and alternative forms. So the test is given to different people at the same time, and this can be done in combination of other methods also. It's not that one particular method only has to for this test. Few people, they use split half, Cronbach alpha, and parallel form. So to say that this my tool is good, fair enough. So far as good. So you can use multi methods depending on the nature of the item and how it is being measured. So that is fine. So what are the different application of parallel forms of reliability? So we can use parallel form for the verification, creating supporting data for construct validity. And the company can use questionnaire, in-depth interviews, focus group. For example, this is where when a teacher having a low score on virtual classroom environment, so can understand why she is scoring, what is the, so this is where you bring in the story. When I say the low score means this could be the kind of an interpretation that is leading to, okay. So that's how the application of parallel forms of reliability. So in today's class, I will just stop here. So we have looked at standardization, norms, reliability, validity. We will touch up because that is much in-depth concept. So we will touch up that tomorrow. So we have looked at overall what is the psychological assessment is, the introduction, and a little bit part of history of personality assessment. We will take it up the validity part, and anything which I have left out, I will try to cover. Class is open for question now. You can shoot me.
Ma'am, you mentioned Gallup for the current hot favorite for personality testing. Anything that is your personal favorite when it comes to self-analysis or when it comes to figuring out career? Is it still Gallup or do you have other specific?
I'm not getting right now in my mind. 2-3 tests. It's like developed by from. I'll share.
Sure, ma'am. It can be later as well.
Yeah. Later I'll share.
Well, even I'm interested just in knowing what is it. So, Chitra, thank you for that question. Very interesting. Ma'am, we'll wait for your answer tomorrow.
One is on interest scale, what you are asking. Huh?
One is self-assessment, personality assessment, meaning ourselves. Like assessment you said, that is
self-assessment on
personality. Understanding the self.
Okay.
You mentioned that's like a hot thing in the US.
No? Overall the assessment industry itself.
Assessment itself.
Yes.
Yeah.
Intelligent personality assessment altogether.
One is self-analysis. The other is career-based, like what can a teenager choose to do based on his?
Yes, even yes.
That's a lot of list of tests are there that I can share. See, psychotronics is one. You can go, can use it in Bangalore. It is a industry, a small uh, setup which gives it delivers psychological tests and manuals for all the colleges in the Bangalore.
Okay.
Psychotronics Bangalore.
Okay.
So they have the manual and the tests, so which they procure on behalf of author. They sell it. So that is one area where you can find the tools and tests, and they have that series of list. So, for example, for adolescents, it's like you have interest inventory, career interest inventory. I think one of the classes I had shared different interest inventory and aptitude inventory is out there.
The website is psychotronicsbangalore.com.
Yes, ma'am. So that is most all the colleges psychology department practical tools are brought there. So that is one. And what I suggest is to use Indian tools, because
Yes.
the tools which are developed
Here.
are standardized are based
Yeah.
on Indian population. That would be
Yes.
much, for example, Westler intelligence scale. So Indian norms and age standardization have already been done from NIMANS. So 10 years back only. So a lot of now it is compared to the 10 years back, the psychometric strength is like a lot of work is going on in standardizing tool in the even the language part also in multiple languages thanks to AI. So everything is like even general health questionnaire is available in multiple languages. So first, as a good psychologist or as a smart person, you should list out, collect few tools that are which might come handy for you, even at the practice level, especially tools which has access to multiple languages, which has norms. So that you can, so already the practical classes that you are there, so like it gives a kind of an hands-on experience, and as well as how to measure and write discussion.
Okay.
Could you mention some? Could you mention few? I mean, whatever you spoke now.
General health questionnaire, ma'am. So that is one. So that has a which is most common screening tool which is used for adult population, even to know about their general health status over last 3 months or 1 month. I think there are short forms of general health questionnaires are there. Then interest inventories. So I can give you a few of them are there. Like I can give then quality life scale developed by is like overall. Then work life balance scale. So a lot of ma'am tools is like a lot of it is being developed. The work has gone in. Yeah.
Ma'am, in the light of what you said about the tools should be more relevant locally and stuff like that,
Yes.
say a test like Vineland, which is heavily influenced by. Um, are there alternative for Vineland, say in Indian context?
Myland maturity scale. I think Indian norms is also there. No, ma'am. It's not. It is not.
Ma'am, it's heavily influenced. They say it, but if you'll
Okay.
actually analyze the data, you'll see that it's heavily influenced.
Okay.
It's
So
like
alternatively, you can one way.
this is not
Yeah.
correct.
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead, ma'am.
I'm saying that what they have assumed for India is extremely bookish and biased. See, India itself, say an urban India, say, and say the rural India, they belong to two different planets, right? And in that context, you're using bookish uh, measurements, then it becomes, at certain point, it becomes unreliable. Especially when you work
Yeah.
with very high functioning people. So in that case, like, are there other alternatives for it?
The alternative comes with the art of doing research. So that's where you use mixed methods. You bring the
Mhm.
narratives, case study designs, so that what is not being able to capture in the tool. So where you can bring, to give an example, which we also faced on the ground.
Mhm.
When we say we do an impact assessment, so
Mhm.
child labor is an issue, but from the cultural context, The family, the child picks up the few skill set, works with the family, be part of the contributing. It is part of it. You can't ask the family to, you can't ask the family members not to take up the bulk of wood to support his father and mother in the
Correct.
lens of child labor. So
Correct.
that's challenge is there. So yes, that's where the cultural context and reference through qualitative methods, as well as how far I'm measuring, the intent to measure also has to be clearly defined, so that and you can use that multiple sources to cover up the limitations as well. Yes,
Correct.
Ashwini ji.
Yeah, ma'am, I had a doubt. So
Yes.
you have mentioned about this assessing the trigunas, right? So, I mean, is there a possibility that, by seeing the questions, there is a possibility that somebody can fake a test?
Yes.
And how do we exclude that? I mean, how do we know whether they are faking it or it's like, their true characteristics?
Yeah, there is one in I think personality inventory. There is what we call it as lie scale. So same aspect might be in a reverse order. So we have reverse scoring mechanism system also. It will be asked in a reverse way. You will be measuring same thing. Did you had food, or I had food? I did not have food. Same thing. So if you are truthful, you'll be the score will be the same. So like that, they reverse the item and ask the same component, so that life scale is being determined. So if the whatever the life score, if it is high, so then you can say that the subject is faking. Yes, the issue is the social desirability is one issue, because now today we know that we are being measured. So you, like the social learning cognitive theory application, what you anticipate because of the modeling and observation. So as part of the anticipation, you know what to give the response. And few people, again, the genuinity, the social desirability is also comes in plays in most of the rating scales. And everyone have already might have last pandemic time already might have participated 50 plus online surveys. So how far it is being few genuinely might give feedback, generally you participate, but again the fatigue comes in, it varies. So rating scale, where the time span and attention, anything more than 60 items, it will exhaust you on a kind of a thing. So yeah, all those things have to be taken accounted. Okay, Puneet ji. Yes.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
So I had a question regarding, since we are speaking about tests and stuff. What about dermatographics, ma'am? The study of fingerprints, and it talks about our natural traits and things like that. How reliable is that?
Study of.
Fingerprints. So dermatographics. So they
Yeah,
take
yeah.
the fingerprint and then they, yeah.
So in the field of forensic, yeah, there's a lot of research work is going on. So that's a good potential area. So again, individual differences, how far you can see, even in personality, also based on the body temperament, right? So based on their appearance and temperament, personality classification was done. So now, similarly on the fingerprints, the personality, few studies are going into that's a part. We'll see. So it is interesting part, but it has a huge potential criminology in that area. So they try to understand the particular patterns responsible for risky behaviors. Again,
Yes. So the reason I mentioned it is because I had an experience with that, and it was very positive experience for me. About 98 to 99 percentage of the things which predicted for me was actually truthful. So that's why I was interested in knowing how reliable is that. You also mentioned to pick your tools, right? One few psychometric tests for you to use in future and things like that. So can this be one of those tools? That was my concern.
you can do a research on that and come up with. You're welcome. But yes, you can see. See any concept which has the, again, five components are very important: objectivity, reliability, validity, and the norms. If you are able to bring all the five, you can use that particular hat. That's it.
Awesome. Thank you, ma'am. On the side note, I'm working in HPE and we use Gallup as well. So
Wonderful. Yeah.
yeah,
See.
we had good experience with that, and our managers use it to understand what sort of traits we have and kind of assign what sort of roles we want. So,
Yeah.
like you said, Gallup is a big player in corporate world.
Yes. 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 How your the feedback what you've been getting from Gallup is helping you?
Yeah, pretty much uh, it defined what I am and how I want to be perceived like in my experience. So I want to be perceived like a people's person, people management kind of. I want to be perceived like that. So Gallup really helped me achieve that, and also it is doing the same for a lot of other teammates and things like that. So they clearly have some data. No, boss, I am like this. So give me a tasks like this or put me into certain positions. So yeah, it is a tool which is used both by employees and managers as well. So to play with the strengths, like you said, it completely talks about our strengths. Just that you're good at this, you have to do this. It's as simple as that.
Yes. Yes.
Ma'am, the Gallup that you mentioned, is it the one that Gallup.com Clinton Strengths 34? Is it
Correct,
that
ma'am.
one?
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Okay, I'm just looking at the website. It's a paid test, it seems.
Yeah. The free is also there. That demo is there.
Doesn't show up. Doesn't show up. But I think if it is a demo, they will not release the result, is it?
Yeah. That's how the market works.
All right.
But we don't know
But
how to
ma'am,
sell our
isn't
product. Yeah.
the Gallup, Puneet, I think this will be a question for you. Isn't this a US?
Little bit louder, Pranali, please.
Okay, ma'am, I was asking, Gallup
Yeah.
seems to like be a international website. So wouldn't the data differ for Indian mentality and Indian people, Indian crowd?
Uh, to speak from my experience and my team, who about 35 people are from India, and all of us took the test, and everybody uh, loved it. So the answer probably is no, not really. We were really happy with
Okay,
what we got.
okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, I think I got some quick call. We had a good discussion, I believe so. So tomorrow morning, as per the schedule, 8 o'clock is the class, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So we will meet tomorrow morning, 8 o'clock. Wish you all the best. We'll take up the questions later. Fine then. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thanks, ma'am.
Thank you,
Thanks
ma'am.
for a very engaging
Thank you, ma'am.
session, ma'am. It
Yeah,
was
thank you.
really
Thank you so
engaging.
much, ma'am. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thank you, ma'am.
Bye. Bye.
Chitra, anybody can answer this? The um, whatever presentation she was using,
Yeah.
is somebody sharing it, or is
She
she
will
sharing?
be, she should be. We can ask her again tomorrow morning because I thought this set, I thought
It's
I would
very
like
useful.
because
Yeah.
it's not so much from the book and the book doesn't have all
Exactly.
that much of history. So this may
Exactly.
be a good set to have. We can ask her tomorrow.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Bye.